Hello and welcome to Sticky from the Inside, the podcast that explores how to build stickier, competition-smashing, consistently successful organisations from the inside out. I'm your host, Andy Goram, and I'm on a mission to help you turn the lights on behind the eyes of your people, light the fires within them, and help more of us lead successful, fulfilling work lives. This podcast is for anyone who believes that's worth going after and who's curious about what really drives people, culture and performance. Each episode, we dive into the ideas and conversations that help create what I call stickier businesses, places where people thrive and love to work and where customers stay, recommend you and love what you do and why you do it. So, if you want to take the tricky out of being sticky, listen on. Okay then, now for years we've celebrated the idea of the heroic leader, the visionary, the expert, the person with all the answers. But really, is that still fit for purpose today? What if the biggest challenge facing organisations today isn't finding even smarter, more capable people, but helping smart people just work better together? Because let's face it, we're operating in a world that's become more connected, more complex, and more disrupted by technology than seemingly ever before. AI is changing the way we work, markets are moving faster and with more volatility, information is everywhere, and despite all of our advances, organizations still seem to struggle with creating silos, competing agendas, poor communication, and as a result, fractured relationships. My guest today believes that's because we've misunderstood the whole thing around collaboration. We've treated it like a nice to have, a soft skill. But according to Chris White, collaboration isn't optional anymore. It's become the standard operating system for modern leadership and modern successful organizations. Now, Chris has spent more than 3 decades helping some of the world's most recognizable organizations grow, transform, and innovate. From helping scale Cisco through one of the most remarkable growth stories in technology, to leadership roles at Philips and Bloom Energy. He's seen firsthand what happens when people are aligned around a shared purpose and what happens when they don't. His new book, Non-Optional Collaboration, argues that success today depends on our ability to understand one another, create meaningful relationships, and build systems that allow people and technology to thrive together. So, today, I reckon we're going to explore why collaboration matters, what leaders continue to get wrong on that front, and why the rise of AI might actually make human connection even more important. Chris, welcome to the show, my friend.
Andy, great to be on. Thank you for the great introduction. Looking forward to a good conversation here. And as you can probably tell and from prior conversations, got a little bit of a passion about this topic because I think it's so important for everyone. You know, it's not just a big corporate dynamic. It's very applicable for all of us.
I also think, and we'll probably explore this, Chris, it's a taken for granted, right? Even when we were discussing, you know, what we're going to talk about and the book and all of that, there's little moments of, really, we're going to talk about collaboration. Everybody gets that. Everybody understands that. It's just not the case. I think it's just one of those things. It's, oh, yeah, we collaborate. Do you? Really? How's that working for you?
Oh, Andy, you know, we're recording this around the World Cup. And to your point, right, we're both sports fans. You know, the expectation to kind of show up and execute as a team, both in sports and in business. To your point, it's a given. It's like you expect it. So, of course, it works. But in my experiences that, to your point, have been very broad and wide and global, I'm like, oh, my goodness. You know, you think you are. And just recently, I've kind of put this sort of acid test in place to say, okay, what's the feedback when you're down the pub after the meeting without the boss? What is that conversation reflecting on the meeting? Is it, oh my God, how aligned? I couldn't believe the agenda. We got the tough issues out on the table. We've made great progress. Or unfortunately, more times or not, it's, I can't believe we didn't talk about. Are you kidding me? We spent 2 hours on fill in the blanks.
Mm.
And that's the collaboration gap that I think is the real, or not, I think, I know, I've experienced it, I've tasted, I've been part of those conversations after meetings, right?
Yeah.
It's a real item. And therefore, I try to capture my passion and try and give people a framework to use from to get better at it, to lean into it. And you also touched on AI. Hey, it's a superpower, but you don't just hand your teenage kid the keys to your first car and say, "Get on with it, have fun." You kind of give them some direction, you help them understand how you use it. I think we've got to be more conscious about how we use collaboration.
I think this is what's really interesting today, because you're not just a Joe off the street who goes, "Do you know what, collaboration is a good idea." You've worked in some pretty well known places on some pretty high profile stuff. You have the scars and the bruises of when collaboration has projected you forward to do amazing things, and when it's fallen short and caused problems for you. And I'd really like you to share some of that background with the audience, because I think we are in danger of talking about a topic like we've just sort of said, that people go, "Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. We all collaborate." And the reality is, I think it's relative. I think when you've experienced incredible collaboration, meaningful, purposeful collaboration, it feels very different to getting on with somebody who sits next to me at work. So tell us a little bit about that background. Give us a brief introduction to the history bit of it.
Yeah, boy, you be careful. There's a lot out there now, Andy. So I want to try and keep this succinct. But hey, I know I hide my British accent well. I'm an ex-Brit, proud American citizen, but I try and package it up. I'm actually a global citizen and a digital optimist. Obviously, big highlight was an amazing time of life and career when I joined Cisco at 1 billion, left $50 billion later. And it wasn't just that journey, it was the people, the operating system, the things we learned. And I think one big takeaway that I try and encourage everyone to really embrace is this idea of lifelong learning,
Mm,
which candidly, I don't think they talk enough about at school and college. They just, say, hey, learn this and this and you'll be fine. But sandwiched between an amazing career at Cisco, before that, I was a startup guy. I did a startup in the UK, which was way before venture capital and people being millionaires. And, yeah, we wanted to be successful, but we were selling to keep the lights on, to pay the rent type thing. And that was a very grounding experience. Luckily, that ended up well. And we sold that one to Microsoft, moved to California, joined this startup company in Santa Cruz, California, of all places, took it public, sold it to Cisco, joined Cisco at a billion. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not a big company guy. Felt very uncomfortable. But the energy, the intensity, the opportunity, the talent just was this magnetic force to attract me to stay there for a long time. In Silicon Valley, people sort of look at you strange if you stay at a company for a long time. But I'm like, why on earth would I go anywhere else? This company is doing some incredible things. I'm
mm,
being challenged. I'm leading. And to your point, I think it really was where I crystallized this idea, not just idea, this practice of why are we not collaborating better together?
mm,
And I give one of my financial partners some credit because we had a very diverse team running this multi-billion dollar business at one time. And one of the first meetings I had with him, he reached into his top drawer and pulled out a deck of cards, Andy. And I'm like, a very strange thing to be doing from a finance guy. And he literally went through every single one of our leadership team and said, well, Tracy's an orange, Gregory's a yellow. And I'm like, what? And he's like, look how diverse your team is, Chris.
mm.
And you and I and we have got a challenge on our to get these people really working together. And so we kind of took that idea, did personality tests with our team, realized, even us kind of older white guys kind of thing, diversified because of the backgrounds we had.
Yeah.
And so how did we facilitate and get people to understand, to get the best out of this team? We really needed to understand each other better. And then post Cisco, 3 big publicly traded, heavy transformational jobs where companies needed to find that next gear and go up to a new level. Been fortunate enough to travel the world, grew up in the UK, moved to California, came back to the UK to run a European business, went back to California, then got an opportunity to go to Bangalore, India, of all places. So I think one of the things I'm most proud of is I've really stress tested this across cultures and working environments. And hey, there's a lot of bright consultants and advisors out there. A lot of them have not get their hands dirty and have got the scar tissue and the, you know, I don't like using sort of weaponry analogies, but dealing with live ammunition is a tricky thing. Dealing with people's emotions, dealing with people's personalities, it takes some finesse. And I think part of my book, I write about being a straight B student. So as soon as this thing called EQ came out, I really leaned into it because I don't have that big an IQ. And I'm like, wow, what a superpower when you can really get more out of a person and a team than they even think is possible.
Mm.
And as a leader, that is one of the most fulfilling, things you can pull off is get to a team to execute at a level they don't even think is possible.
Yeah, I mean that is the game, right? That is definitely the game. Now, you've mentioned the book. I mean, the book's called Non-Optional Collaboration, right? I mean, it's a fairly strong, direct statement, Chris. And based on your experiences, where's that come from? Why non-optional? What are you trying to say with that?
Yeah, and thanks for amplifying that because I think some people look at it and like, well, hang on a minute, isn't that like an oxymoron almost, right? Aren't you meant to want to collaborate? But Andy, I'm doing some advisory work at the moment with a very creative startup in New York in the cybersecurity market, and it's a team of less than 20 people. And their sales and marketing teams are, if we're not careful, ships passing in a night.
Yeah.
And they're super motivated individuals. They're very cordial to each other. But sometimes you got to slow down to speed up and realize, hang on a minute, marketing is creating all this great material. Sales types have got to figure out how to collaborate and leverage it, not get frustrated, not get defensive. And then you just take that across an entire company. Look at HR, something you've invested a lot of time in, right? One of the most important assets helping our teams, helping our people often is left onto the side unless there's an emergency to deal with, right? So creating that culture, and you wouldn't believe, even at a fantastically successful company like Cisco, Andy, the number of times I just called a timeout and said, hang on a minute, finance, marketing, sales, engineering, we're getting in a room and having a conversation. And what I was surprised about more than once, that meeting typically started with people looking at each other and saying, wow, I haven't been in a meeting with us all together, let alone having a structured conversation about how we can work better together. So yeah, it's been a fascinating, combination of learning and teaching and listening to books and hearing people present, but then taking that presentation and getting your hands dirty and really making it effective. And it motivated me to write a book on it, right? And hopefully it's a framework for people to leverage, real life examples of how they can get better at it.
Well, let's get into some of that framework in a sec. The collaboration, I guess, oversimplification. Even if you take my background, marketing and HR, right? Not working in HR, but working in marketing, realizing the fact I can't get anything done without people, but also recognizing that those two departments are doing the same thing to different audiences, right? Both are looking at recruiting, keeping, growing, and developing. And they just have different tactics to do those sorts of things. But did we start off in all companies working together on that sort of stuff? No. When we did things take a different turn? Absolutely. Even in the last couple of weeks, being in rooms with some fast growing businesses and sub teams of the big leadership team, amongst lots of different takeouts of our sessions together were, you know what, we should really spend more time together talking about what each of us does. This is fundamental, what we're talking about here, right? So I've thought long and hard about the non-optional collaboration thing about it in researching this. And I think it's a really interesting bit of tension in that previously the job has been, well, I've got to try to get everybody to work together. But now it's a case of, hey, if we don't, we're in trouble, right? This has to be the standard that we set right from the get-go.
Well, so Andy, if I jump in a little bit, it's interesting you mentioned that term tension, right?
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of CEOs talk about friction.
Yeah.
It's okay to have friction of course you have friction in your business, Chris. It's good for the business. And I'm like, hang on a minute, we're also in Formula One and NASCAR series at the moment, right? 10 years ago, it took a Formula One team 21 seconds to change a tire. Now they can do it in under 3 seconds. And that was not created by the guy changing the wheel, telling the gal who's refueling, say, oh, take your time. It's okay. When you're done, I'm ready. It was, I hate to say it, forcing collaboration. Hang on a minute. How quickly, how can we coordinate? How can we get the best output out of these components to get it out? And you got to be intentional about it.
We said we're both sporty guys, and without spending the whole episode with us relying on sport, there is a classic management consultant picture of people in a boat. Let's all pull together, right? The classic kind of, hey, we're one team. We're all pulling in the same direction. Oh my God, that's amazing. What a metaphor. But in practical terms, you've got a background in serious rowing. And so it would seem like a ridiculous opportunity not to talk to you about collaboration and actually what it's really like in a boat. Because in reality, that has to be an entity that cannot function without extreme levels of collaboration, right?
Andy, let's go from one extreme sports analogy to another, right? You're taking me from one of the biggest stadiums on this planet with one of the most high-paid, bankroll teams in the world to the River Wye in Hereford, pouring down with the rain and 8 guys in a boat. And it is interesting upon reflection how non-optional a support it is, right? Yeah. No matter what level, right? My son's a great basketball player. There's no timeouts in rowing. There's no substitutions. There's not even a half time, for goodness sake, right? When the flag or the whistle goes, you are committed. And I think what's also preparing for the support, you spent hours mentally and physically looking for that perfect synchronization to get that boat moving as efficiently as possible to win a race. And I was, fortunate enough to have a schoolmaster that was intentional and very, we went to 2 world championships. We went to Henley Royal Regatta a number of times. And then when the famous book, Boys in the Boat, was written, there's a great first chapter there that I just couldn't remind my son that his dad was an athlete at one point in his life, because the phrase talks about a 2,000-meter rowing race is the equivalent physically to 2 back-to-back basketball games.
Right.
But it's not just physical exertion. It is that collaboration and that mental toughness that you're always searching for. And I think that's that's why it plays to a business analogy so well. I'm not just saying read the book and you'll be perfect. Create a framework, create a culture where you're signing up to constant improvement. You've got the right mindset, but then you have a framework to collaborate at a whole new level that I would almost guarantee you can get more out of your team than you're getting today. Don't put up with functional silos. Don't put up with friction.
Yeah. So let's dig into that framework, because you've mentioned the framework word a couple of times. That is what I guess the book is built around, right? This framework for real collaboration. Can you lay it out for us? Just give us a sort of a high level view of what this framework is, and maybe pick some of the component parts and just walk us through that.
Happy to. And actually what I try and highlight is it actually starts off with making sure you got the right foundation.
Yeah.
And for me, actually the foundation is mindset and attitude, right? You've got to kind of find that mental place of having a positive mental attitude, but there is an opportunity, no matter how good or how bad things are, there's an opportunity to improve, right? And that's straight out of the lean mindset sort of teaching that's pretty pervasive at the moment. But then, number one, as a leader, do you really understand your North Star, right? Where are you going, right? There's one thing to say you want to be successful, you want to win games. You got to kind of really put some clarity and quantifiable nature to where you're going. And it's the old adage, how can you get anywhere if you don't set a goal type approach? The second piece is then, okay, if you have a team, which most of us do, big or small, do you really know them? Or are you relying on the interview process, the culture of your meeting? They all seem to get along when they get together. is that really a solid enough foundation to really get the most out of your team?
Mm.
And often enough, I found it's not, and so you've got to facilitate your team really understanding each other. You also, as a leader, you got to facilitate an environment to get the best out of that team. And then you got to create a plan. So I've used personality profiling an awful lot since that infamous conversation I had with my financial controller many years ago. Myers-Briggs just happens to be from the college my son graduated from. DISC is used an awful lot. I don't care what it is, but go through a methodology and a process from a professional organization that can really help you dig into that and then facilitate a conversation so people don't just know their personality profiles, they know how to better deal and work with other personalities. Then, most important part, you get everyone in a room if you can, and physical is better than virtual if you can pull it off, and you create a plan. And I think this is where some people misinterpret collaboration as kumbaya and agreement. No, a highly collaborative planning session gets pretty emotional, sparks will fly, you'll challenge each other, but you'll do it in a professional way that you come out with the best damn plan ever. And one of the experiences I share, a consultant years ago gave me this best practice of a year from now exercise that is so impactful, Andy, right? You pull together this great plan, you're all pleased with yourself. At the end of the day or at the end of the session, you run two scenarios. A year from now, Andy's on the unemployment line with a tattered corporate t-shirt, and someone looks at you and said, but a year ago, you were doing so well. You had all this opportunity. You had this great team, blah, blah, blah. And the exercise as a team is what went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy, if you've set up the right environment, it's incredible what comes out. It's like, well, I know we got a good sales team, but they're a little arrogant, or they don't really work it well. They don't use the ammunition from marketing as well as they could. And so you create a list of tough topics you go deal with. The counter to that is a year from now, oh my God, we've got success at a level we never thought possible. What are the things we really did?
Yeah.
And a lot of things come out as, we actually acted as a team, right? We didn't let heroes get in the way of team success. We put in a rigid operating system that didn't get diluted. And so creating that plan needs to translate into a set of metrics, an operating system that we hold ourselves accountable. Because, the two of my most overused one-liners are, number one, in God we trust, everyone else bring data. So let's make sure it's factual and accurate. And then the second one is, don't confuse effort with results. An old leader of mine said, hey, we're not in the newspaper industry. We're not selling news, we're making news. So don't show up and just tell me I'm busy. I want to know what difference we're making to our customers, to the market, to the mission.
Yeah.
And then let's learn from that. So, and also, Andy, I think it's also important, have some fun with it, right? Catch people doing good things, share success, and have a culture where you can deal with the tough issues as fast as possible. But it's tough out there, right? We're all getting bombarded by social media, new, doom and gloom philosophies. AI is going to put us all out of business. You've got to create that culture that gives you that platform for success as well.
I mean, if you take each of these elements in isolation, these aren't new things that people haven't talked about, right? These aren't new things, and that's not being rude.
No.
These are things. Is your position in this, in the unique or the required element, is that all of these stitched together, right?
Oh, I thanks for pointing that out, Andy, because it's so true. Because to your point, you can point at each of them and say, well, we do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've got a plan. Andy, you probably wouldn't be surprised, but you're kind of shocked if I gave you names of names, but I'm not going to, I'll protect the innocent here. But, the number of companies I've walked into that either they've handed me or I found the strategic plan that they sold investors, sold their shareholders, sold their company on. And then I look at the operating model that does not align to that strategic plan.
Yeah.
And so to your point, you've got to put all the chinks in that chain together. Otherwise, you're not going to get maximum output. And I think this is where a lot of the sort of head fakes in the business come in. Oh, no, we had a great planning session. Everyone got on really well. Oh, my God. Okay, but Have you now translated that planning session into a new operating model? Have you changed the way you operate, right? And no, thanks for pointing that out because it's such an important part of the lessons I've learned, the things I've learned from leaders. But the value of the framework is, yeah, you can't skip from 1 to 3, right? There's what's that great other analogy? There's no elevator to success, right? You got to take the stairs.
I think this is the interesting thing when it comes to things like strategy, which I think has been made out into be some sort of dark art that only a few people behind a very, very heavy blocked door are allowed to sort of play with, is that there's a real conflation between strategy and plan. I think there's a lot of people that love putting plans together, the things we're going to do. That's great. And they feel very comfy, normally from their operational silo. Yeah, we're going to do these things. But where it all goes awry is where they haven't done the pre-thinking about actually what's the strategy? Where are we choosing to play? How are we going to win in that market? And if that's the case, to your point, what are the capabilities that we need? And what are the systems that are going to support all those sorts of things? That, in my experience, where I've seen a team really work together and really collaborate, is where that strategy or key strategies were really well understood. And then the plans had rigorous alignment to those pieces of strategy. So instead of everybody being scattergunned and achieving their things, we may have been working independently. We may have been deliberately collaborating on things, but we were all contributing to that delivery of strategy.
Andy, it's such an important topic, right? We created a startup business within Cisco called our smart grid strategy, right? And it was, when the electrification of the grid was going digital. And, Cisco was a big company at the time and access to, I think the number was 3,500 utility customers around the world. We had a team of 20, Andy, right? And we looked at an adoption curve of, okay, who are, laggards and people that are going to suck resources and not buy anything? Who are the early adopters and the people that are going to buy something? We came up with a list of 100 out of 3,500. And we made a commitment to say, that's our beachhead.
Yeah.
I don't care how sexy the meeting is or where the location is, we're going after those 100 as a team. And I think, and it was based on a lot of advice from the famous author Jeffrey Moore from Silicon Valley, Crossing the Chasm is a bit of a Bible in tech world. And one of the analogies that have stuck with me so well, he's like, Chris, in California, and in those odd occasions you get sunshine in England, you take a piece of paper, you take a magnifying glass, you get the sun to focus on an area. You do not move your hand randomly around that piece of paper. And it feels like a long time, but it's actually not that long. And then you get combustion. And that analogy, because God bless us, to your point, we're all busy.
Yeah.
It's not non-intentional collaboration.
Yeah.
But the functional silos are wound up, get off, go do your mission and don't get distracted. But then you're missing that X factor of, well, what if I did use HR as a strategic weapon? What if I did understand the financial position? What if I did use that marketing material a little better? Those are the X factors that get you more growth, more sustainability, better culture, more retention.
For me, and I haven't really thought about this before, but collaboration comes in different flavors because I think the basic vanilla everybody thinks about collaboration, or my assumption, I can't speak for everybody, is that collaboration is me working alongside you together, right? I have to be with you working on the same thing together at once. Whereas where you've got this framework in place, particularly, know where you're going and this kind of headline strategy, I don't have to be with you to collaborate on that, right? I don't have to be working on the same piece of paper or in the same chat stream or in the same meeting. Actually, my efforts are all guided towards the same target as you. So we are, in effect, collaborating, right? And I think this is the difference, right?
And it is another great observation because if you're not careful, collaboration can be easily misinterpreted.
Yeah, it's teamwork.
It's kumbaya, it's teamwork. Everyone shows up and, use another overused analogy, right? This is not 11-year-old soccer, right? You're not got, 21 little kids running around after the ball. It's like, no, hang on a minute. I'm not even going to use Cristiano Ronaldo. I'll use Harry Kane, right? Harry Kane's good at putting the ball in the back of the net, right? We got good old Pickford to save goals. Let the goalkeeper do his job, let Kane do his job, but let the team work as a team on a mission to win the goals. And I think it's such a subtlety because even Cisco, by the way, it's not very well publicized, but they leaned into collaboration a little too heavily, had this whole boards and collaboration activity that everyone was expected to use,
Mm.
and it became too much of an overhead. It actually slowed things down because all of a sudden the wrong people, I wouldn't say the wrong people were collaborating, but there was almost too much
Sure.
overhead involved in the operating model. You've also got to make sure you've got as an efficient system as possible that finance team gets finance stuff done, salespeople get sales stuff done, but that power of the team is working together to get you that multiplier.
Yeah. I think that power of the team is something I also want to pick up in your list because I think you said the myth of the hero leader in there. I think currently we are seeing that traditional leadership model or typical shadow that people say, oh, that's what leadership is about. We're seeing that being challenged left, right, and center, not just because of changing generations coming through or technology changing. The landscape, I think, of leadership is morphing. And I'm just interested in just getting a little bit more from you on that myth of the hero leader and the changes that you're seeing inside organizations and what this does to this whole notion of how teams are set up and how we collaborate as organizations.
Yeah, Andy, that's you get onto if you're not careful, a little bit of a thorny topic actually, because hey, who wouldn't want to be Steve Jobs, right? Who wouldn't want to potentially be Elon Musk, right? But I would argue, if you're not careful, and even good old Jensen at Nvidia, right? They're a little bit of markets of one. They are incredible anomalies that are great to aspire and lead to, but is their style that scalable, right?
Yep. Yep.
And so leave that 1% where it is and have admiration and credit for it if you want. Then there's the rest of us that are got to figure out with our capabilities, how do we, step up and lead? And so to your point, and I think you're touching a little bit on the dynamic of AI in our world today. If we're not careful, everyone's got their own strategy because they've thrown it into Claude or Chat GPT and they're doing it in silos. And that very functional silo operating model that motivated me to write this book is getting turbocharged at a level is going to be insane. So do you understand what each silo is using AI to do? And is it either breaking us apart or really getting us better as a team? But without intentional collaboration, it's potentially making those silos even worse.
In the work that you've done and in the work that you're now doing, do you see, is there still maybe an over-reliance on hierarchy over departmental, interdepartmental human relationships? Is this are we still functioning too much in some of that model, or actually, Andy, we're seeing a lot of change. I'm actually seeing a lot of change in that area. What's your take on it?
Yeah, God, did another challenging question. Good job. You know, the challenge of a freaking leader is to lead, right? And I think the challenge is not enough people double click on what is involved in leadership, right? They get promoted, they're passionate about doing a startup. And it's like, okay, what are the responsibilities that come with leadership? One of those responsibilities, Andy, is to empower your team. Right? Some people are successful being a micromanager, but they typically find out that it's not a scalable style. However, you don't just empower your team, right? You got to make sure you're strategically aligned. You got to make sure those team members have the tools, the talent, and the training to do their jobs as best as possible. I, I, I think what's shocking, Andy, is the number of real, true, inspiring leaders we all have is a pretty short list.
Mm.
Like you, I've read a lot of books. I'm a curious leader, a curious person. I'm keep looking for, more and more examples. It isn't that long a list, right? I had the good fortune of working with the late General Colin Powell, right? He ran the American freaking defense business, right? He was a five-star general. His mission was not to be the best at fighting wars. His mission was to stop wars, to
Yeah.
avoid conflict. And was just a fabulous human being that really did an incredible job across way bigger an enterprise than Cisco ever had. But an inspiring leader because number one, he was just a damn good person, Andy. He had high ethics, high moral values. He gave a damn about his team. But boy, he had a mission. He had clarity of execution. He held people accountable, and he got stuff done. He got the right stuff done. It was incredible.
I think this is what's really interesting when it comes to the leadership stuff. And the reason I asked that question about the hero leader and all the rest of it is that it may be that I am horribly biased because of the kind of person that I am. But if I think about the people who've had a real impact on me, and it wasn't always the head of the organization, but I was very lucky. I think I worked for some fantastic people at different levels. I worked for some less fantastic people, but those people that have lasting impact on me and people I still reference when this sort of topic comes up are the people who I don't talk about the strategies that they put into place, right? Or the amazing ideas that they might have had. And that's not to say that they didn't, but that's not the thing that I recall. That's not the thing that has stayed with me. It's been the impact on me has been around what they got from me, what they made me do that I perhaps didn't think I could do. Maybe some home truths they shared with me that gave me choices that if I'd never had that told to me, I would never have made. How they went about it. And also their consistency, not just with me, but with other people. To me, those are the traits of leadership. I don't think that is a generational thing. I suspect if we look back at any generation, there have been people that have been doing those things. That their numbers, their percentage of the overall mix may have been different, but to me, that's the thing I would be looking for in leadership, to be less about how great that individual is and how great they are at growing the people around them.
I just got back from Switzerland. I did two keynotes over there, and the first keynote, I talked a lot about AI being a superpower and how we've got to learn. Got to be careful with it. It's a freaking powerful tool. I adjusted the second one and say, hang on a minute, no. We have two superpowers at our disposal. AI is one. The second one is human collaboration,
Mm.
and you highlight it right there on what leaders got the best out of you, what leaders got the best out of me, what leaders didn't get the best out of me, right? I somewhat allude to, I don't sign up to Attila the Hun leadership styles.
Yeah.
Some people do, Andy, and hey,
Okay.
hey, that's okay. It just doesn't get the best out of me. But to your point, I think great leaders really do a good job and it's the framework exercise, right? It's not just they're good public speakers. It's not just they're good at one-on-ones. It's not just they're good humans. They connect all those dots that make them great leaders that have got more out of me than I thought was possible.
I want to just quickly cover a little bit more of this AI before we even think about trying to summarize this discussion, which I have loved, by the way. When it comes to the AI thing, at the moment, there's a lot of us looking over our shoulder going, well, AI is just reducing the reliance and the requirement for people. And yet at this time, your message is almost in the complete opposite direction when it comes to the marriage of AI and people. Can you just tell us where that core belief comes from?
One of it, I got to give credit to a Stanford professor at NVIDIA's GTC conference 2 years ago. She had a great breakout, and she highlighted human beings' track record of creating tools. Pick printing press, the wheel, the internet, you name iPhone, whatever it is, right? She also went on to say we've got an interesting track record of using them for good or for evil. Take a good old car wrench, right? If you're stuck on the M4 shooting down rain, you got to change a tire, having a car wrench is a pretty good tool to have. If you go out of the pub one night, go down the wrong alley, and someone's got a car wrench, that's probably not a good scenario. Here we go to AI, automotive industry, right? When we first brought cars to market, we walked in front of them with a flag to slow down progress. Human beings took 50 years to invent a seatbelt. It took us 75 years to mandate usage of them, and it saves over 1 million lives a year. So our track record of tools is very interesting.
Yeah.
However, I think we've really got to lean in and learn how to use AI for good, and we've got to learn in and get better at human collaboration just at the time as deglobalization is a topic, right? Arrogant leaders is a topic, right? Hey, like I started out, right? I'm a optimistic guy. I'm a global citizen and I'm a digital optimist. But like all these tools, you got to learn to use them for good versus evil.
I think there's something else running through this because you're hugely passionate, enthusiastic, and have a lot of energy for this topic. And right, I think at the start of this conversation, you talked about one factor in this framework really being about mindset and positive mental attitude. Now, we haven't gone into any great level of detail in that, but your own personal situation, the whole battle with cancer and everything, that must have given you clarity of direction and why this is an important thing, right? Those are the things that really bring everything into focus and show you what really, really matters.
Yeah, Andy, it's a tough topic, and we also talk about leadership, right? Too many of us have evolved our leadership style to say, "Oh my God, you've got a health crisis. Take your time, you'll be okay." It's the second battle my wife and my family have gone through with cancer. I don't think enough leaders, unless you've been really close to it, realize what a tectonic shift someone is going through when they face that sort of battle, right?
Mm, mhm.
I decided to take a year off and not get back into the corporate world, and support my wife through this fight. I didn't realize I was going to have so much time on my hands, in doctors' waiting rooms, helping my wife sleep through chemotherapy. And I've got to be honest, Andy, no desire to write a book.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of time on my hands to reflect on a career experiences. And I'm like, God dang it. If this book helps 5 people, I'll be happy. I think it can help a lot more than that. And especially at the time we find ourselves, both in history, economically, and that fear factor of AI taking over the world. But just remember, right? This is the first major pivot we've had where 8 billion people in the world have been connected with social media, and the algorithms are designed to make us fear all this stuff, right? And it dates back to caveman days, right? The brain is wired that way. We got up and I don't want to get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or a mammoth today. I just got to go find some food and get back in my shelter. So connect the dots and lean into this.
I love it. I love it. So look, we've got to this bit in the show, Chris, I like to call sticky notes. I'm going to ask you to try and leave the audience with 3 little pearls of wisdom that, for you, crystallize the notion and maybe even the actions associated with non-optional collaboration. So if you were to leave behind 3 little sticky notes that people could stick around their screen to remind them every day when they're working what they need to do, what would those 3 things be, my friend?
Well, first of all, you got to take a reflection on even the request for sticky notes, because even in this digital, no, because I'm dead serious about it, right? Even in this digital era, the practical reality of having a sticky note on your screen, on your phone, is incredibly powerful. And I think that is a multi-generational benefit. It's a great way to finish this session because it's a real challenge to someone like me that is so passionate on so many topics. But, I'll give you my 3.
Sure.
You hit on it a minute ago. Number 1, mindset matters. Positive mental attitude, but it takes some work. We're getting bombarded by stuff that takes us down rabbit holes, and God knows the market for cat videos out there. There's a lot of distractions out there. Lean into stuff that will get you in the right frame of mind. A friend of mine's launched this super conscious app that helps you program your brain on a regular basis to stay focused and stay positive. So number 1, mindset matters. And PMA is the little acronym I use: positive mental attitude. Work on it. It's okay to have a bad day, but reset yourself and lean in to be positive. Number 2, sometimes you got to slow down to speed up. And that's the art of collaboration, right? This isn't functional speed. This is company speed. It's getting that pit stop done in under 3 seconds versus 21 seconds, right? So be conscious of it, be curious, and God forbid you listen to the other function that is trying to add value to your role. And I think the third one is a little bit of, you alluded to it again in this great session, Andy. You know, have a plan, work the plan. We've been telling people that for years. Why on earth do not enough people do that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But you get into the whole philosophy of change management, and it's, I need to go to the gym every day, but I don't, and I'm distracted, blah, blah, blah. But, in all seriousness, and that's what I've tried to give with the book, give people at least a framework that is not just Chris White's experience. It's based on working with the great John Chambers, history, training sessions, great HR and functional leaders. But have a plan, work the plan, right? Don't confuse effort with results. And to the sobering reality of what I was challenged with, right? You got to enjoy the journey. I know that's a throwaway line, but boy, enjoy that World Cup game, enjoy that cup of coffee, enjoy the time you have with your loved ones, because there's a randomness to life that you never know. You never know what's around the corner. So, try and embrace it, but it takes some work.
Amen to that, my friend. Chris, I've really enjoyed meeting, connecting, listening to you. If the listeners would like to find out a bit more about you and the work that you're doing and get hold of the book, where can they track you down, my friend?
Oh, thank you, Andy, for that. First of all, my daughter helped me launch it. I've got a website called nonoptionalcollaboration.com. So literally www.nonoptionalcollaboration.com. Book is available, not at all leading retailers, but on good old Amazon. It's on Amazon UK, it's on Amazon India, it's on Amazon Australia, it's on Amazon USA. Again, non-optional collaboration. And then two, I'm a natural collaborator, right? I enjoy connecting with people on LinkedIn. So it's Chris White, IOE. Look me up, connect me. I like to continue this conversation with equally passionate people, Andy, that kind of give a damn and want to make a positive influence on people. So, I'm looking forward to us continuing this conversation and our collaboration. And, you're a friend of my brother's, and he's got a tremendous amount of respect for you. So thank you, Michael, for introducing us together. But, let's see what else we can do together as well, Andy. I'm glad we're connected.
I look forward to that, my friend. Brilliant. Listen, thank you so much for coming on. It's been absolutely fantastic, and the best of luck with the book and everything else that you're doing right now.
I appreciate it. Great job. Back at you, Andy. It's a great podcast, and looking forward to touching base and helping interact with more of your listeners.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, that was Chris White. And if you'd like to find out a bit more about him or any of the topics that we've talked about on today's show, please check out the show notes. So, that concludes today's episode. I hope you've enjoyed it, found it interesting, and heard something maybe that will help you become a stickier, more successful business from the inside going forward. If you have, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps. I'm Andy Goram, and you've been listening to the Sticky from the Inside podcast. Until next time, thanks for listening.